I'm Liz McGinn. I'm here with Sensei for the Trend Detection podcast, and I'm joined here by Farhad Ziaie, the head of digital delivery and operations. Farhad, do you want to kind of give us your background?
Yeah, thank you, and hi to all the listeners. As she said, my name is Farhad Ziaie. I'm the head of digital delivery and operations. I'm partly responsible within Siemens for a very exciting topic, which is basically everything that has to do with regarding digital technology and digital transformation and how we are seeing this very magnificent trend within the industrial setting, of course, where these topics are becoming more and more important to the progress of the entire industry. So that's my background in that sense, and I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome. So our main topic today will be kind of going over what is IT and OT convergence. Um, and I guess Farhad, from your perspective, why is IT OT convergence such an important topic?
Yeah, it is an extremely important topic from my standpoint because if you're looking for what is happening currently in the world, right, in terms of the digital technologies are making their way and transforming all of our lives, and the same thing is happening at the scale of the industrial setting as well, right? So there's a lot more data being generated, there's a lot more connectivity within the industrial setting, a lot of IT technology making their way, in a more traditional OT environment in that sense. So this convergence is actually pretty, I would say even it's a great trend. The convergence. It's even inevitable because it has to happen because it's bringing a lot of benefits. That can make our customers and our the entire industrial setting more efficient, more cost. They can induce more cost reduction, but also they can increase the sustainability as well. And this is something that has to happen if we want to, be cost-minded and save our planet as well from harmful waste.
Yeah, could you explain a little bit by what we mean when we say IT OT convergence?
Well, if you look at, for example, what it means, we talk a lot about technologies like data and artificial intelligence, big data, artificial intelligence, or machine learning. There's a lot of other stuff coming into play as well, like for example, digital twinning. How does that really can impact your production? So if you look at the convergence, it means basically these new technologies, which were not really, centric to an industrial environment, are playing a bigger role. So, for example, something that we known all along, if you, for example, take some picture with your phone, you always have that cloud connectivity where your photos are uploaded to the cloud and you can access them where you want. And that same trend is also happening as well. Customers are dealing with these, hypervised IT architectures with them on premise, but they also need cloud connectivity because they have multiple sites around the world when they need to access their data. And this is the convergence that we are talking about, more interconnectivity between the various assets within the industrial setting and having access to that data anywhere where you are around the world. So that is if you're talking about that convergence, it means basically also that converging technology, that IT making its way to the OT and becoming an integral part of it.
Okay, so just making sure that everyone can access the data from like an external, not you don't have to be on the
Yeah,
shop floors or anything to get that
exactly,
data.
exactly.
Nice.
I use it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I use the cloud obviously with my photos.
Yeah,
Otherwise, I would lose all of them. So yeah.
exactly, exactly.
So what kind of challenges are you seeing that customers are facing with this IT OT convergence?
Yeah, because that's the entire thing. If you look at, for example, as the rapid technological advancement, and the reason why, for example, IT OT integration, or maybe why we call it industrial IoT, is inevitable, is because it brings a lot of benefits. We talked about how connectivity and data can give you more insights regarding your operation, which can help you reduce costs, increase your productivity, or even help you to become a more sustainable producer on that sense. So these rapid technologies are ensuring these kind of progression that will also make sure that our customers or in the industrial setting will stay relevant. So, but the challenge from that part is that we don't realize is that when you're talking about, having these very new technologies, these IT centric technologies that are coming within the OT environment, there is also a lot of risks that is going to happen, right? So increased connectivity, while it can make sure that, for example, you can access your data, it can also pose a risk regarding cybersecurity, right? So who's going to make sure that nobody's going to, try to hack or misuse the data by intercepting it? The same again with the example of your phone and the photos going upstairs. Those are private photos. So if somebody intercepts that and uses those photos, it will become a jeopardy or risk for your operation. So, and also because of the increased, again, the technology coming in and playing a bigger role, it also means that you need to have the know-how to maintain it. So because if you make a mistake and you break something, then it can have a really detrimental effects to your production. So these are the challenges. So on the one hand, you have these very extreme, benefits to this new technology coming in, improving your production. But on the other hand, you have these risks. So how to cope with it, how to maintain it, how to secure it, how to make sure that you have the right people to be able to run it. So these are the challenges that we are seeing predominantly within the customer or industrial environment.
Yeah, I know. At Sensei, it's a topic that they ask a lot because it is a cloud based. So I completely understand those kind of the risks and the worries about making sure it's secure and stuff like that. IT and OT convergence is a really broad topic. One of the solutions that Siemens offers is an IT infrastructure that is tailored to the customer specific production environment. How exactly does that work?
Well, that's a really good question because at Siemens we always try to think about what the customer needs to be able to run their operation. How can we make their lives as easy as possible in terms of having a more center specific? If you look at, for example, the trend within digitalization or IT infrastructure, you see that the trend is more about taking. I want to have a central platform where I can manage my data. I can manage my applications. I can manage everything that I right? And within the industrial setting, we saw often that it was decentralized. You had, various separate networks from each other, and they were doing their own things and without any interconnectivity. And what we thought about is to provide a sort of, platform for our customer called the Industrial Automation Data Center, which is basically an on-premise data center, like, not an on-cloud, but it can be on cloud, but it's an on-premise solution. And we combine, this state-of-the-art hardware to be able to centralize everything that the customer needs to run their operation and give them that insight that they want in a central location. So it's basically an IT stack consisting of the hardware, the software, and the services also combined to be able to tailor to the customer needs. And it's based on virtualization platforms, for example. So in the past, you had these, various PCs sitting around within the industrial environment. And what you can do within with, for example, something like virtualization, you can basically virtualize these PCs on a central platform, and you can maintain it in that central location as well. But it can also provide become a platform for your data archiving. So we talked about how it's really important to gather data. And in the past, this was always very disjointed, where you had data in several locations, but right now you can bring them back and have that data archiving also in that central. So this is basically what we've been doing, helping our customers to cope with that IT/OT convergence, to at least provide them a platform with our IADCs to be able to cope and make it as easy as possible.
Nice. I mean, so how does that work when you want to make it with that convergence? Like, I understand that you're bringing all the data together. Is that also what we're defining as convergence? Is bringing the data together versus like shipping it to the cloud?
Yeah, it is part of that because we talk about big data a lot, but we don't really think about that you need to have the right data, but you also need to centralize the data and you make the data more uniform, right? So in that sense, as I explained earlier, because if you have data, for example, that is really disjointed or has several different formats or even in a different language, then you cannot really bring them together to gain that additional insights and to be able to see, okay, what is happening across the entire plant, right? So what we do is basically provide that archive with the technology stack that we have to be able to have that central location. And if the customer wishes to maybe, gain insights, for example, on multiple sites, then they can also always choose, to bring that data archive to the cloud and make on that platform, make it even more uniformly on various sites as well.
Nice. I mean, I guess that's something that Sensei does. We need all the data kind of in one point to kind of pull from. Um,
Exactly.
Speaking of Sensei and predictive maintenance, you mentioned that various kinds of applications can be integrated and hosted on the industrial automation data center. Is it also possible to integrate predictive maintenance?
Well, that's very a good question because the platform, to be able to work with a platform like Sensei, right, which is a terrific predictive maintenance platform that can help a lot of customers, predict any issues before they happen and give them that possibility to eventually fix something that might cause them huge headaches with a massive disruption. The way it works, the way Sensei basically also works, it needs, really uniform and clean data from the lower levels of the OT infrastructure. And the way that, for example, the industrial automation data center can work, it can be used as a more or less a data relay, right? So to collect that data, make it uniform and, easy to deliver to the Sensei platform to be able to digest on and use it in their machine learning algorithm to learn about the operation and to be able to predict, right? So that's one possibility. The second possibility, of course, we know Sensei is a cloud solution in that sense, but the second possibility is, for example, if there are already some subset of machine learning algorithms that can be already done, be put on the industrial automation data center to be able to pre-run or pre-process data in order to be able to send it back to the Sensei or cloud. That's also a possibility, right? And in that sense, when Sensei, we talk a lot about feedback loops with predictive maintenance. If there is might be also a future possibility that if Sensei sees an issue reoccurring and it has the possibility to provide an advice on how to redirect the automation protocols, then the data relay can also be a really, the industrial automation data center as a data relay can also be really put to good use to be able to cope with that back with those protocols directly back to the automation to be able to, have that feedback loop in place in terms of predictive maintenance, predicting an issue, but also making sure that you have a fix to be able to implement in the automation configuration as well.
For sure. I know Sensei is, industry agnostic. Is the automation data center also?
Yeah, actually, in that sense, it is really industry agnostic because right now, for if you look at the industrial automation data center, it's really tailored to be able to cope with the most OT applications out there. Most of our OT applications, like for example, Sematic PCS7, TIA Portal, so all of these really heavy applications that our customers, which are critical to customer operations, can run on it. But it's just still a data center and very generic platform so you can always use it in that sense to run other non-Siemens applications on it as well. So for example, we are seeing already that we provide the platform and the customer is running other applications like for example, warehouse management systems or even databases on it that are not really supported by Siemens, but it's really in that sense really agnostic to what kind of applications we can run.
That's awesome. It's good to know. Since the data center is the centerpiece of the operations, how can the organizations ensure its security and reliability with all that data?
Yeah, exactly. Because if you look at the platform that we offer in that sense, the data center that is on-prem, which we offer, I mean, it comes pre-configured in a box. So we have already taken a lot of precautions to make sure that the entire network components and the various hardware and software components are already pre-configured, but also comply to the most stringent cybersecurity regulations out there to be able to put a box out there that is already pre-configured to be cyber secure more or less. But there is also the fact that you need to be aware of is the fact that cybersecurity doesn't really stand still. It is always evolving, it's always changing. So you always need to have a continuous attention to maintaining these systems, but also making sure it stays cyber secure, right? So, for example, a security feature that is valid right now, it might not be valid in 5 years or maybe even 10 years. I think even the cycle times are even shorter. Maybe it's already, something that is safe right now. It might not be safe in 1 year at a time. So it needs continuous updates. It needs continuous attention to that as well. And that is why it is really necessary to be aware that if you have these kind of IT infrastructures and you want to protect them, then you need to have proactive monitoring, for example. You need to have proactive maintenance, regular maintenance, doing these kind of things, and really focus on: am I safe enough? Is everything, every measure that I have put in place, is it working? So it's a continuous effort that you need to do.
Is this all on the customers or does Siemens help?
Well, that is basically up to the customer, right? So in that sense, of course, as I said, there is a lot of customers that are saying, it is more or less somewhat alien technology for them, right? So it's new technology that is coming in, and a lot of our customers are saying, yeah, we cannot, cope with how to maintain it, how to secure it. There are some customers, I have to be honest, that are saying, no, we have uh, our IT department is already far ahead in that sense that they're already managing our OT infrastructure as well, which, for example, these platforms are a part of. But there is also, a lot of customers saying, no, this is really difficult for us. We don't have the know-how, we don't have the skills. So that is why we decided, in that sense, to help our customers by offering them additional services on top of the infrastructure we are providing to be able to to help our customers manage and cope with this challenge that they have more.
Well, how does that work?
Well, I can explain how we try to help the customer. We've been developing, along also with the IDC, the Industrial Automation Data Center, a new service called Remote Industrial Operations Services. So these are, this is a service that it's not a standardized service, so it's a very open and flexible service. It's always depending on what kind of requirements or challenges the customer has. And what we normally would offer to the customer, it's depending on, as I said, the requirements, but it's always, if you look at, for example, we focus on their availability by continuously monitoring the systems. If something goes wrong, we can manage the incidents in that sense. They can, we can help them out in order to make sure that their operation stays clean and running at all times. I think we all know within the industrial setting that if production is not running, it can cost them up to millions per day, right? So what we try to do is to offer continuous monitoring and incident management to make sure that never happens, that scenario never comes into play. But the second part of is we talked about the security. How do you make sure that you're protected, that nobody is going to try to, breach your infrastructure, hack you, take you hostage? I mean, we are seeing OT actors or producers becoming more and more of a target because they're pretty, I would say, capital heavy in that sense. And a lot of hackers see, okay, if we take them hostage, we can get a lot of monetary funds for return for taking them hostage. So they're becoming more of a target. So what we offer is we always manage for these vulnerabilities because these hackers are trying to sniff out what kind of vulnerabilities are there within an industrial setting. So it's really important to do vulnerability management. That's what we offer with this new service that we do. We manage the vulnerabilities, we mitigate them. For example, if there are security, I would say, vulnerabilities out there, we can mitigate them by providing updates. We can do anomaly detection by analyzing their networks and making sure that if there is any suspicious behavior, we can report on that as soon as possible. And eventually, that's a really new feature of the service that we are currently developing, a security operations center as a service where we are constantly monitoring their entire infrastructure in more detail, analyzing every data that is, passing from one endpoint to another. and act on it. If there is a threat or there's a breach or there's a hack, we have their cybersecurity experts in the back end to be able to come in, jump in, and make sure that we contain the breach and eventually eradicate any threat that from the system. And just to finish off the entire story, we do a lot of maintenance. Of course, we said we need to check a lot of systems, whether they're working fine, maintain the system, making sure that they're up to date and whatnot, and support. And that's really important. Our support guys are available 24/7. So if there's something happening, even middle of the night, because we know normal industrial setting, producers do not only work during office hours, they also work during the night or the evening shifts. It's a 24/7 operation, and that's why we tailor this service specifically to that, a 24/7 service, so that we are ready any moment of the time, 7 days a week, 24/7, to help our customers.
That's awesome. Does that also help with compliance?
Yeah, well, that's a great topic that you brought up, because compliance is another issue, right? So that is coming into play. So it's not only that the companies need to be aware of the risk that they're of the cybersecurity that's coming into play, but governments are also realizing lately, we need to be able to counter these threats coming in and trying to cripple our critical infrastructure, right? So there are a lot of regulations are coming into play that are, involving many of our producers when in the industrial setting. For example, one of them is the European NIS2 directive, which is coming into play, I think, in the next few months or years, which is going to impose a lot of heavy restrictions or heavy regulations to, to the industrial actors, to be able to show to the government or show to the authorities that they comply to a certain standard. And this is really very important for our customers to be aware of, because if you're not really aware of the fact that you can be hacked, you need to be aware that there are regulations that you need to comply to, and if you don't comply to them, you can get really heavy fines. So by subscribing to the service that we are providing at the moment, you can use it as more as evidence to compliance, to show, okay, I have a managed service that is taking care of my maintenance, take care of my cybersecurity, uh, and in that sense, I already tick the boxes of most of the requirements from the government in that sense.
This sounds like a really great feature. Are all these monitoring and managed services only available for the industrial automation data center, or can customers who have other assets or systems also receive the support?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, it is. At the moment, of course, we are the service is pretty new, right? So we are at the moment scaling it more or less to be able to cope with a pretty standard situation. So we need to have a more standardized service. At the same time, we also realize that the customer environment is very, very complex, and it differs from our, I would say, the ideal situation in that sense where we are looking. So I would say that at the moment we are looking, we are focusing hard on a standard solution, like for example the IDC or maybe other virtualization platforms that come into play in that sense. But we are definitely open to maybe discuss case by case how we can also help other customers that, for example, have different kind of infrastructures. If the need is there, the will from Siemens is also there to help them out, and that's how we deal with it.
That's awesome. Can you give us some examples of industries that have successfully implemented such these ITOT infrastructures?
Definitely, definitely. If you look at, for example, one really good example that I can give you. Unfortunately, I cannot give you the name because of confidentiality agreements and such. But we are working closely with a big multinational metal producer in that sense that already implemented the IADC. They did so initially, for example, only to run the critical applications for the entire production. I mean, if you look at their plants, they're huge. I would say extremely big. And if it is really amazing to see that these, really small kind of computers are running such a huge operation out there. So they started by saying, okay, we want this to centralize our automation at the moment, so to run the critical applications on it. And then, these questions popped out in their heads. Okay, how do we maintain it? Wait a minute, this is really important to us, right? This is basically really important to us. How do we maintain, how do we secure it? So they all started asking us, guys, can you help us out? And we thought about how can we help them as maximize their availability, and how can we help them to ensure the security. So then REOPS, or remote industrial operation services, the new service that I just talked about, came into play, and how we started delivering this service to them as well, which they're happy, and they're expanding not only the IADCs but also the REOPS part also to multiple sites. But I have another thing to tell you is that this customer was not only dealing with the fact that they are running their critical applications and having the platform and the services alongside it, but they were also thinking about these kind of IoT, industrial IoT kind of topics, the predictive maintenance. How can we ensure that we gather data from the OT and maximize basically our production or become more efficient? So what we are doing with them right now is saying, okay, we already have a great platform sitting there, right? So how can we use, apart from the fact that it's running your critical infrastructure or operations, how can we use this platform to become a more or less a data gateway or a data relay or maybe even data archive to be able to, they had these several initiatives. For example, the same customer is also using Sensei for their predict maintenance, and we said, okay, then we can use this platform to gather the data, from the infrastructure, and we then send it from this platform to the Sensei cloud to be able to analyze and predict any issues that might come up. But they also have, for example, several other initiatives to gather data for example, their energy management, to be able to see, have several insights in how much energy they were using to become more sustainable, to maybe take measures to use less energy in that sense. So you're seeing, for example, that it's not just a standalone platform or standalone service that we're providing. It's already within the customers, already leading to this various initiatives coming in and becoming an integral part of their, I would say, their IT/OT strategy, more or less, and how it can become more integrated in that sense.
That's awesome. That's a really great example of kind of explaining why it's necessary for customers to kind of have this data center to like pull it all together and then to have to grow from there to make sure your plant becomes more smart.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Awesome. Well, we're coming to kind of the end of our session here today. Do you have anything that you'd like to, leave our listeners with?
Yeah, no, no. I think we discussed a lot in that sense today. It's only, I think, very, very, very important for our listeners to know and understand that, if you look at IT/OT integration and what it means, again, it has a lot of benefits. So I would really like to implore them to, pay a lot of attention to it and maybe invest a lot in what they're doing, but at the same time be aware of the risk and challenges that it poses also for their organization. Because it's great to have that ambition to be say, oh, I want to really embrace these new technologies like, predictive maintenance or data centers or, increased connectivity. But there's also a lot of challenges out there as well, like cybersecurity and maintenance topics that need to be involved as well. I would really implore them to have an integral vision about it, and know that Siemens, as a partner, can help them, guide them to that transformation and path in the future.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Farhad, for joining us today. I really appreciated all your insights.
Thank you. Thank you as well. Thank you for the opportunity.